Hello, WeedAid! Wow. Hey, everybody. So we're just about to start our panel on recovery. For all of you that are out there enjoying the wonderful refreshments that were provided to us, courtesy of Yak's Restaurant in Mount Shasta. And we're going to have a big interactive community forum, or something like that. Like that. Yeah, let's show this. So anyway, I want to get started, and we're also going to be putting this on the internet, so if your friends miss it, you can tell them that they'll be able to go to weedaid.org and see what we said after we've said it. So I want to introduce our panelists just really quickly. We have Carmen Mauk over there, and she's the Executive Director of Burners Without Borders, and which is a group that came out of that thing in the desert that some of us have been to. We have Jerry Hannan, who will also be a performer later on this afternoon. He went to New Orleans after Katrina. He went to Katrina after New Orleans. And then we have Brenda Zimmerman, who's here from Union Beach, I keep saying Union City, that's near Fremont. Union Beach, New Jersey. And so I'm just going to let each of you kind of say a few words about your experience with recovery and communities, and then we'll open it up. Hopefully we will have some good interactions, even though we have a small group. I'm sure we have a very passionate group of people who've been through this experience. So I'll just take it over to Carmen. Do you want to start?
Sure. Hello, everybody. How are you guys doing today? Yay! Thank you, first of all, for inviting us. I'm actually from San Francisco right now, and I really appreciate coming up here to, first of all, see kind of what happened after the fire. I did a little tour yesterday of Weed and was very amazed at how quickly the crews were able to clean up. It's really something. I've been doing disaster relief now for about 9 years, and it's rare to see a response like that. So good work, everybody who has helped with that. And as Andy said, my name is Carmen, and I'm the Executive Director of Burners Without Borders. And for those of you who may not know what the thing in the desert is, do you know what Burning Man is? Okay, anybody not ever heard of Burning Man? Okay, well, for those of you who may not be familiar with it as an innovation kind of experimental lab, it's more than just a hippie festival in the desert. It's actually really grounded in art, and a lot of people who come we may be using some of their products on a daily basis, like Sergey Brin, who started Google, and just a lot of different kinds of folks who come to kind of figure out who they are and become the best person they can be. And there's something about that environment that really, helps people reach higher and, kind of become who they really want to be in the world. And my interest when I first started going to Burning Man in '99 was, how do we take all this creativity and actually bring it into our own communities to make a difference? Because my experience had been doing human rights work for most of my life, and I thought, wow, we can really do something with this creativity. So when Katrina happened during Burning Man in 2005, a lot of people left to see what they could do to help. And they took generators and everything that people needed to survive in the desert for a week down to New Orleans and Mississippi, and in different places on the Gulf Coast to see what they could do. And very shortly after, because the people who went down had a lot of skills, there was a heavy machinery that was donated. We were the only group that had this on the coast. We only had 20 people down there volunteering to have a front loader and an excavator just available to help anyone who needed it for free. And at that time, people were coming in and charging $10,000 to remove people's damaged home, and FEMA won't come in and help you until you can show that you've removed everything. And so it puts really poor people in a difficult position. And so what we try to do, what we did then, was kind of like surgeons coming in and figuring out what needs to be done and getting it done very efficiently. So for $100, you could have your house taken down so we could do your neighbors. And we ended up doing about $1.5 million of free debris removal so that people could get back on their feet. And one of the best things that we did while we were there for the community, which was, we kind of didn't even know that the community needed this, was having an art burn every Saturday night and the sculptures were made of the debris that we found around us. And because the town we were working in, Burlington, had seen the 30-foot wall of water come through, and no one had helped them for 4 months, they were traumatized and distraught and really had nowhere to go. And this was a little bit like a town like Weed. There's about 3,000 people who lived there, and they didn't even know if they were going to have a town again after Katrina came through. And so when we started burning all of this stuff that was around, just blown up around us, we found that people really enjoyed it, and they started making art in their own yards in their home and then bringing it to us on Saturday nights. So we were able to, in 5 months' time, create really good relationships with the folks and provide a place for them to have catharsis and be able to put one foot in front of the other for the long road ahead for the recovery. And so since that time, we've been in Haiti, Philippines, and different kind of hot spots where, again, we want to come in with very specific, people who have skills. So with Haiti, we've partnered with Communautaire, which is a new organization that came out of Burners Without Borders, in a way. One of the guys who was the operations director was working with us in Peru and decided to advance what we had been doing there. And basically now Haitians are running an entire conference center that has like a workshop space, skills training, tool lending, and that's also been taken to the Philippines. And the idea is to help people just take charge of their own recovery and not be waiting on someone else to come and help them. And what are the conditions that are really going to create a strong community after they've experienced something devastating? So we're lucky that the UN really likes what we're doing. Apparently we've doing their mandate, which is to connect survivors to all the international NGOs that come in. So that's just a little bit about how we do the work that we do. It's a little different than what you may have heard about with traditional disaster relief, but it works, and we're really proud of the volunteers who've made that happen.
Oh, thank you very much. Maybe we'll go to Jerry next. Jerry is Irish and he has great stories, so we'll...
Hi, thanks for having me down here. My name is Jerry Hannan. I'm actually a songwriter mostly, and I've contributed to a few catastrophe events. I went down to New Orleans after Katrina with a group called Dirty Hands Caravan, and mostly I had written a song, and I'm going to sing some of these songs later today, and that's how I wound up in this seat right now. But all I can say is what I found is that, disasters, big and small, do present an opportunity. It's kind of a personal experience and maybe a spiritual experience for a community to get together. And it's a challenge, the way kind of New York really came together after 9/11. I mean, it was just obvious, and that was, huge. But so if you just hang on to the hope part of it and reach out, and that's what my tunes have been about. And so I haven't had a lot of hands-on experience. I'm not part of a 501c3 or anything like that right now that does that, but I'm just...
When you went down to New Orleans, maybe tell us a little bit about that caravan and how it started and what you saw when you were down there.
The caravan started at Coachella Music Festival, and actually Sean Penn got on stage and said there's 5 buses outside, and anyone who wants to get on them will have free food and lodging for the next couple of weeks, and we're going to go down and do charity work from here all the way to New Orleans. And so I jumped on that bus, actually in Texas. I flew to Texas because I missed the bus. And so we had 150 people, mostly young kids in their 20s, but people up to their 50s and 60s, just helping, and mostly down at Katrina, just go into a church, and people are working on it and, trying to hang on to the hope. And so we physically helped pull up old floorboards and did the physical help, and then talk to people a lot and to see what's going on and keep it moving.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, thank you and for sharing your stories on this. I'm going to turn it over to Brenda, who is here from Union Beach, New Jersey, and she's has some pretty interesting things to say about the physical rebuilding. And you know, she may not appear this, but she's actually a huge property developer, I believe. So Brenda, go ahead and tell your story.
Hi there. My name is Brenda, and I came into town from New Jersey. I actually was fortunate enough to go out right after Hurricane Sandy via a Burners Without Borders project, and we tore down about 115 houses in that one by 1 square mile town. And the Burners project wrapped up, and I was fortunate enough to stay and work on some grant writing. It's been 2 years since I landed, and we've, our direct project, we've built 12 homes. We have 2 more involved. We've got a couple $1 million to rebuild houses, and we've administered a couple $600,000 plus worth of assistance programs that we got through different state, local, FEMA, and private philanthropy projects. So one of the things that I've been really fortunate enough with there, which we were talking about this last night. I don't ever want to call it a blessing because what happened in this community is a horror. But we were able to focus on one small town. We didn't have to take care of all of New Jersey. And that this happened in Weed as one small town does present an opportunity to you folks to stay together and band together. And it's not, you know, the whole county that's been affected, where the distribution of resources becomes even more tenuous. I also lived in Haiti for 1.5 years after the earthquake there, so did mobile medical, did green rebuilding, orphanage support, and the whole gamut. So I'm a little bit of a jack of all trades when it comes to recovery, but it is my life and my passion now, and I thank you all for having me here. The other thing I wanted to mention before we even go any farther is any of you that are survivors, and to your friends and family and neighbors, I'm sorry. I'm sorry this happened to you guys, and I'm giving you all a big, big hug. I know during hard times we try to cheer each other, saying things like it's just stuff, at least you have your health, at least you have your life. And I think part of the recovery process is actually the acknowledgement that your stuff is important and it hurts. Losing your home is a power of place. It's a power of you. It's your grounding. Your belongings are your tie to your history. I get it. I've watched people, you've lost your photos, you've lost your grandma's wedding dress, and that hurts. And we can all just try to say it's stuff and move on, and that's great. Take those deep breaths and keep moving forward. But it's also okay to acknowledge how hard this is and how crummy it is to have lost everything you own. So I wanted to say that to all of you and remind you to keep sharing that with your neighbors. And sometimes we need to be tough to make good decisions and keep moving forward, but every once in a while, take a step back, acknowledge what's happened, feel it, and then take that deep breath and take the next step forward. So that was what I wanted to open with.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I think I was wondering, is anybody here a fire survivor? Does any folks here were part of that? Great. You know, again, we have this huge crowd, so we'll take times. But in talking about this last night when we were at dinner, one of the things we wanted to say is we don't want to come up here and just tell you what we think. We're really more interested in finding out about your experiences and what the community needs. And I know there's a long-term recovery group that is working very hard and very diligently and seems to be doing a really great job of that. But you know, I will open it up to questions if any of you have something. Here, let me take a little Phil Donahue kind of walk down here, and it's a city and it's Great Northern. Some of the local nonprofits are involved in this. There is a resource center that's been set up to aid the victims. Yeah. Do you have any comments that you'd like to talk about? I don't want to put you on the spot. You know, I won't make you do that.
I'm very grateful, you know, I'm grateful and fortunate, you know, that we live in this wonderful community. You know, we've been, people has been very supportive to us because, you know, we lost everything, but without help, of the people, the thoughtfulness, they help us, little by little to rebuild our lives back, they, like feed us, clothing us, and with financially, with money, and also spiritual too, and so far we're getting all the help, just think so we're getting stronger, because this is, we don't have control about things, and they happen, so we need to keep a real positive mind and just move on, because this is, it can be worse. Luckily, we're very blessed, and nobody died, except, some are animals, but we're in pretty good hands. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that. We're going out to you. Anybody on, you all have any other thoughts that you'd like to?
If I may, to your question about who is long-term recovery group, keep asking that question. Haiti, we realized we had to fight to get into the UN because of security issues, and we were a small little, they considered us a ragtag startup, but we fought our way, improved our merit to start participating in the different cluster groups, which are the long-term recovery groups. In New Jersey, the long-term recovery is a little more established, but those forums and those groups are only as strong as whoever participates. So as a community member, as a nonprofit member, as a victim of the fire, you need to, I know it gets tired going to meetings, but participate in those things. The stronger your group is, the more funding you can get. You'll get the case manager to stay. These case managers, you need them for a year to rebuild a community. You need them for 2 years to rebuild a community. So keeping that participation and showing that your community wants them here and needs them here, even though they will not be perfect, I will guarantee you that, but they are trying to help. So stay active in all of those conversations and the community meetings and those groups. It's very important.
Okay. Any other questions or comments that anyone would like to share of this? I mean, you were kind of touching on the whole psychology of things, and I think that's a really important thing. I think we've been very lucky here because the community did come out, and there were some pretty huge fundraisers, and I think there was so much clothes that we could have probably started a Walmart. What else? What kind of is the process? Again, you have this initial shock when the disaster happens. How do you see people really coping as the time passes and they're getting down to business and they're having to deal with 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months down the road, which is what we're getting into now? Do you have any thoughts about that? Anybody?
Yeah, that's tough. I think it's the same in almost every country that we've worked in, but it's also very different depending on really what people started out with. If you are not accustomed to having to meet your daily survival needs in a way that you're really feeling, then it's going to be a lot harder for you to overcome something traumatic in your life, just in general. That's what I found. And for people like in the Philippines, those folks are super resilient. I was just in Baja. There was a hurricane that went through there, and there was a media blackout, and there was no information at all. So I went down there to see what was going on, and I found it was a month after the hurricane had come through, and people were resilient. That's not necessarily what I found in Katrina, where people were kind of very comfortable and had worked their whole lives to have comfort, but didn't necessarily develop the capacity to deal with trauma. Fortunately, the community was able to come in and help with that, and that's what I love about when things do happen in these smaller communities, there's such an opportunity for something real to happen and for the community to be stronger than it ever was. And what I found is once folks get through this initial kind of shock of, wow, what's going to happen with my life? What's going to happen next year? Is my child going to go to school? How am I going to create normalcy? How am I going to put food on the table because where I work is not going to be online for 2 or 3 years? Maybe it was already a depressed economy. A lot of these places already have problems before the disaster comes. A natural disaster comes. And it can be politics that are creating another disaster. It can be a lot of different things that don't necessarily help a situation. But what I found is when the community comes together, like Brenda was saying, so much more is possible than was ever possible before. And that's what I think is important to keep in mind, that after a disaster, there's so many more possibilities that will not be available even a year from now. And when we come together and strengthen these connections and start dreaming about what we want for our community, and I was telling someone earlier that, a lot of times the design of a town is 100 years old, and it's an opportunity to think, wow, do we want to rebuild with asbestos and all these things that were used 100 years ago? Well, no, we don't, and it's illegal. So what do we want to do? How do we want to dream what we really want for our communities? And that's the opportunity that I think smaller communities can really take advantage of, because they're not dispersed. There's opportunities to come together. And when something happens again, whether it's water or whatever, the community is going to be there stronger, ready to kind of stand together and at least be in dialogue as well, because we've seen each other, we've seen each other's pain, we know what we're going through. And so even if I get up and say something that you might not agree with, as a fellow survivor, you're going to listen because you know what I've been through. And I think those are the things that can be missed in larger communities, but in small communities, it's just sitting right there and available for everyone to participate in. And that's what makes it work.
I'm wondering, in some of your experiences that you've had in other areas, did you find situations where after disaster strikes, people either were able to improve the community or the community shifted in some way? I think we have a situation here in Weed where people have been beautifying the town, they've been trying to get business in, they've been trying to kind of create a creative economy that could be here. Have there been any experiences that you could share with communities where they've ended up better than they were before after this situation?
Brenda, do you want to talk about Haiti and the businesses that started with Communitaire?
Sure. As mentioned, I worked in Haiti for about 1.5 years. Haiti is a very different place, so I just want to point out that a large amount of the commerce that happens down there is considered informal. There's street vendors, there's the lady next door that sells you eggs. You buy a beer or soda out of a cooler on the street corner and they might have a little awning and you sit on a rock in front of their storefront. And that's normal. That was business as normal pre-storm, or what was that event? Earthquake, pardon. Maybe they had a few chairs and a table, but there wasn't a lot there. And so this is going to sound maybe a little bit silly, but the group of us got down there and we rented this acre-plus property with the vision of doing it as a green building workshop and all of these opportunities that have developed since. You've got a bunch of international people, usually in their early to mid-20s, and it doesn't matter how broke we think we are as American backpacker kids. We are infinitely more wealthy than the people in the community that we're serving in the Philippines, in Peru, in Thailand. So we have safety issues. So what we did as one of our very first businesses was we neglected, or we repaired the back wall on our property but left a small hole in it and made a deal with the neighbors that they would be our vendor for all of our Coca-Colas and beers and those kinds of little street items, which kept our volunteers off the street with money in their pockets, and created a small business for this family. They ended up putting their kids back in school, and one of their children was in college within a year of the earthquake, which was not an opportunity before that. And that really proved to a lot of people where this little microfinance stuff starts. So that started to expand through the community. We had people coming in and we had needs. So small businesses up and down around the streets, supporting different, clinics and hospitals. And then bringing in the educational capacity and the volunteer teaming that we did with the groups that have started businesses. Some of the guys started these graffiti t-shirt businesses. We fostered a group that is doing a beautiful job of, they make flip-flops that are recycled tires. And they have gone international with the business, and they've supported dozens and dozens of Haitian workers. Again, their kids are going to school. Their standard of living is improving. They get fed every day, which was not always something that happened for these people. So really changed their standard of living really dramatically in Haiti. In New Jersey, we're seeing a lot of the same stuff. The biggest issue is trying to train and educate people in the community that when you build a really big house, everything changes on that really big house. Your taxes go up, your utility bills go up. And so we're trying to balance that doesn't change the community too dramatically while encouraging the businesses to come back and improve the streetscapes and make a little more of a downtown and keep that community vibe going that brought everyone together to help with the recovery process. And we think that the town council has gotten on board, and some of the regional councils have gotten on board, and some of the universities in the area have helped with some of that visioning. And we hope that, at least in this little town of Union Beach that I've worked directly with, that their long-term is going to be really positive.
That's great. What about either the other two of you in New Orleans? I mean, I don't know if you all know, but I grew up in New Orleans down there. And so that was another city where, people knew that disaster was going to be happening. They knew that the buildings were built in the swamp, except for the French Quarter, which is where they started on the high ground. And as the city expanded, it moved out to lower ground. What's been kind of the experience in New Orleans? Is there anything there in terms of, we were talking a little bit about rebuilding and deciding, okay, are we really rebuilding in the right place, or is there some ways to plan your urban environment a little differently than what it was before? Do you have any thoughts about that?
I think New Orleans is a very particular situation because, first of all, just for context, Katrina, the reason why it was so awful was because no neighbors could help each other. Because for 100 miles down the coast and 100 miles inland, people had experienced, everything from the roofs coming off to a complete devastation. It's never happened in this country before. The closest thing was Hurricane Andrew. It took them 10 years to recover, and that basically hit the Florida coast. So when we heard about New Orleans, we heard a lot of people, and I'm sure as you did, that people were scattering around and people didn't know where their loved ones were. They didn't know if they could come back. They didn't know what the deal was. And that's still the case. The lower Ninth Ward is, I think, still 50% empty. What the town did, because this is another thing, when you're operating with a corrupt government, is I think it was about a month after New Orleans had this new law that said if your grass in your yard is past your ankles, then they can take back your property and the city will now own it. So when I went down there to work with a couple of people on a separate project, I just saw 65-year-old African-American men mowing entire blocks so if their community were going to come back, that they would actually have a home. And it was so sad to see. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I didn't know who thought we needed to get lawnmowers in here a year and a half after a disaster to save a community. So it's kind of like keeping your eyes open to the patterns of the government in the past. I also work with several Native American Indian reservations, and I learn a lot from what people think is possible, because they think, oh, we've had all this corruption in the past, no one cares about us. Well, this is an opportunity to really raise your voice as a community and say, hey, this is actually we're not doing this anymore, and this is the way forward. And I think that the towns that I'm aware of that have been able to progress the most is when they come together to vision, as Brenda was saying. Without that, things can happen in a really haphazard way that's not beneficial maybe to a few individuals, but not to the whole community. And so it's that old thing with any challenge, it's like holding the government accountable, holding ourselves accountable to, a lot of people will come in and try to take advantage, build huge houses, displace folks, and I think that's not going to happen here, fortunately, but Weed will have its own set of challenges based on its history and what has gone here before, and it's the people who've lived here who are the experts. And and should, feel free to raise your voice and find other people to do it with you, because that's what makes everything progress, from what I've seen.
It was a very upstream, downstream situation for us. And just to double back, you guys know Sandy hit the eastern seaboard, New Jersey, New York. I mean, it was a pretty, I think they're saying second to Katrina in the way that it affected so many people. So there was a lot of visibility. And some of it was getting connected with friends, benefactors, donors that said, hey, I know somebody that works at Princeton. Some of it was the Rutgers people coming in and saying, hey, we know that you're doing a good job. I will give my team the little gold star for the day. My boss, the woman that approved Burners Without Borders coming in and starting demo, and that I have worked with since, decided to say yes to everything. If someone came in and said, I have a truckload of clothes, she said yes. And if we didn't need the clothes, we figured it out and we gave it to the next town over. And we have said yes to everything, almost. So that's kind of how we did it. And we worked evenings and weekends and 7 a.m. to get up and get on the phone or drive in and go to a meeting and get these people in and tour the students around to make it accessible to them. But you can't ask too many questions. And the other thing, as people recovering, it's always worth a phone call. If you have 25 minutes that you're sitting around instead of I know we all need to chill out, watch TV, and do our thing once in a while. Call the community college. Call UC Davis. They've got the Desert Research Institute. Those schools have the fire study groups or whatever you're interested in maybe trying to bring into your community for long term. But the environmental sciences groups particularly are always looking for communities, my experience so far, to do case studies. And the Rutgers group particularly did a multi-method, multi-visioning, it's a 400-page professional case study, and they did it for free for us over the course of a semester. And it's been fantastic, and yet another thing that brings legitimacy to what you're trying to do with your visioning. Sways your town council members. We had all of the politics in these towns in New Jersey. People are afraid of their jobs, they're afraid of change, whatever it is. Maybe they lost their house too. People are scared, they're lonely, they don't know what to do. Everybody's been damaged. And sometimes they just don't know what to do. So having these groups come in and give us these recommendations has really made people open their eyes, I guess is the right thing to say, and get on board with some of the change, because everybody's afraid of change, especially when you've lost a lot. Change gets even harder, but trying to put that out with the groups that can really give you good guidance is very, very wise. But I think you've got the college here that might be able to offer you, and you've got some resource centers around here that want to help with the visioning.
Yeah, the college here has been really great. I know that after the disaster, they had the various fire agencies and the city officials were here on this stage and explaining to people what was going on, what the process was, and it really was. As I think I might have mentioned, I'm talking to some of the people at the FireWatt, which is a technology group down in Dunsmuir, and they have developed an app for firefighters and first responders, and they were saying they really thought that this was just a really exceptional response that the city and the local people did to this. One other question I might have that anybody can answer or whatever is, are there websites or are there resources or are there groups, if I was someone who had either lost my house or wanted to really assist in rebuilding the community, and I wanted to learn more and find the success stories and find those places where there's some great information either on the internet or elsewhere. Do you guys have any recommendations for some sources of that kind of information?
I did a little research yesterday when I got into town, and again, I know that you have a long-term recovery group. I would start there, and again, your activity with them will also, you'll get a feedback cycle there that is usually positive. Red Cross is a good place to start. They're not always the easiest to work with. Salvation Army can do some depending on how your long-term recovery group is working, but they tend to be smaller grants, and I don't mean to $7,000, but you're not rebuilding a house for $7,000. Salvation Army will often come in with short-term rental assistance, which is very important for all of you that are displaced. But those are the places I would start. There are a million foundations. There is, grants.gov, but it can be very cumbersome. So again, trying to partner with these recovery groups where hopefully they've got some people that have some training and some education can push some more information your way. But there's tons on the internet. Another thing that I was going to offer with Andy and some of you, the long-term recovery people, is seeing where, as you guys progress, Burners Without Borders and their connections, some of the groups that I've worked with in New Jersey that are, national groups, making sure that you guys are on their radar and talking to them about bringing, teams. There's Habitat for Humanity, for example, but there's also a number of other groups that maybe don't have that face time that come in and offer $20,000, $50,000, $100,000, or $20,000 in materials, and it turns into $100,000 of work with volunteer labor. So you take your insurance money and partner with these groups, and you can go home. So there's ways that we can help push some of those resources your way as well.
Yeah, that's great. We do have the website that's at weedaid.org. And so one of the things we are going to be trying to do, in addition to putting the webcast of this panel that we're having today on that website, is we are going to ask all the people to share their links and share their resources. And so that hopefully will remain there on the internet and posterity for people to share information as well. What about insurance? Does anybody have any information about insurance? Or Ken, you have a question?
Yeah, I want to back up are there any existing online forums, websites?
Well, there's the long-term recovery group has, I think it's called recovers.org, and it seems to be set up as an all-purpose website for recovery, and so it's not just. Well, there's a section of it. The way it works is that people sign up and they can create a group on the Recovers website, and there is a group that's being administered by the Weed Long-Term Recovery. And so, for example, all the people who are having events that are fundraisers and benefits or community meetings or things of that nature are listed there. And so it's a really good resource. It's not anything that people here created. It was created by some other folks. So that's one example on it. But back to insurance. Anybody have any kind of wisdom about dealing with the insurance company? I know we have co-sponsorship by an insurance group. They've got a table in the lobby that are here helping people just deal with their insurance companies and so forth. But maybe any of you have anything to comment about insurance?
Be tenacious with your insurance companies. That's the only way I can say it. Insurance companies will not give you a full policy payout 99% of the time. So prepare for that, unfortunately. I don't mean to be harsh, but prepare for that. And don't take their first, have them come out, spend an extra 3 weeks working on your claim if that's what it takes. Tell them to send the adjuster out again. Send your pictures in, review your files. That's the best advice I can give you. Just keep trying because they are a for-profit company and that's what it comes down to, and they're trying to protect their interests as well, as much as yours, but my experience with insurance companies has not been super positive in the sense of people getting what they thought they paid for with the policy. With that said, everything, insurance and otherwise, is going to be a mountain of paperwork, and we call it paperwork fatigue. I get it on a regular basis working. I'm sorry you're going to have to do it, but part of this recovery process is getting organized, which sounds like a very daunting task. It's another way that community members can help out with your friends and your neighbors. If you have a fax machine, if you have a printer, if you have those things that you can lend to a friend, please do it. If you can get the library or some other resource center to set up a place where it's cheap or free for people to come in and do that kind of document work, You need to get a new social security card. You need copies of everything. And as your insurance policies and any grant foundations come in, they're going to ask you to give them every piece of information on your life ever. And I'm not joking. There's a way the recovery process works, and some of it's actually dictated by the IRS, which is in a certain amount of time in the immediate disaster aftermath. You could pull up in front of this building in a brand new Mercedes. You could come here in a wheelbarrow and you get help. That's when the Red Cross is here. It's blankets, it's water, it's food, it's basic personal hygiene. Doesn't matter who you are, if you can show them that your address was Weed, you were in the disaster, you get help. Well, as the life cycle of the disaster changes, the rules get stricter and stricter. And part of it is that they call it a windfall, which is shameful in a lot of ways. When you think that people have lost everything they own, how are they getting a windfall? But there is still a cap of what they think you deserve to recover with. There's no other way to put that. So they are going to vet you, as they call it, for income and what other benefits you've gotten. And it gets tedious and it gets cumbersome, and somehow all of these agencies work together technically, but they all have their own set of paperwork. So be prepared, and my thoughts are with you while you deal with that, because it is long and it is tiring. So, go to Staples or wherever and invest in a binder and some highlighters and get your packet put together and get your originals somewhere safe and get your copies made, because you're going to need them. And it's part of the process. But just keep your copies, because somehow insurance companies lose everything and then they tell you they need it again 6 weeks later while you're waiting for a check. That's my experience, and I'm not trying to worry you. I'm really trying to be pragmatic and honest, so you can, once again, those moments of go outside, throw some rocks, get really mad, come inside, take a deep breath, and start over on the paperwork, because that is part of recovery, unfortunately.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, we're going to wrap up in a little bit more. Are there anybody else out here has some burning questions or comments that you'd like to share with it? Don't all talk at once. Okay. Over there? Hold on 1 second. Let me. I don't know. I always wanted to be a talk show host. I don't know if this is going to be a new career for me or whatever. But let me. Who had the question? Here.
They can hear me.
All right.
The Lao and Hispanic populations probably are highly, a lot of them own houses when they're insured, and they also probably have rent. Not only that, if maybe one person in the household is fluent in English, where do you reach out to these populations with someone that can help them get that help if they're shut out because of cultural issues that really leaves them out in the cold? And their people likely are the ones that are being most needy.
Yeah, one of the things that we did when I wasn't there yet, but in the first month in Biloxi, is we identified a Vietnamese community that the government was about ready to move out of there, so that they could take all the casinos that were in the water and put them on land. And they were just going to edge folks out. So what we did is we helped rebuild their community center, which happened to be the Buddhist temple in their community. And we knew that if we helped them, and we gave them all the materials for free and let them keep their insurance, and we knew that they would be able to survive, and they have, because they had a center that was supported by the community. And when people have a place to gather, and they can look at each other, and there's power there, just like we've been saying. And hopefully there's folks here that are reaching out to them and bringing them in if they are on the kind of the outside of this whole recovery effort. And I'm so happy to hear you saying that, because a lot of times we don't even see those folks in our community, and we can forget about them, that they're there. But to me, it's, the fire didn't see any color, they didn't see race, it didn't see, how poor people were. It just went through and took everything. And so if the people who have maybe the strongest voice can invite those folks in who don't and make them a part of the process, and whether it's government officials or the representatives here, and it's mainly the community that has to say, this is important to us. And if not, then those folks will be forgotten, as they often are when, on a daily basis, regardless if there's a fire or not. So there's a lot of advocacy that we can do for each other when things are the hardest in our communities. And that's what I found when people saw what we were doing in Katrina. White people, black people, they just wanted to help. They're like, whoa, you're saying that these folks want to bring these casinos on land and just tear down all these houses? Like, yep. Well, the government hadn't told them that. We just happened to be in these meetings where it was talking about. And so we felt like it was a huge responsibility to get out in front of that, and we didn't go in there with that mission or even really know what we were doing. We just knew that these folks needed a voice. And sometimes that's enough, just to get the ball rolling so that it's like, hi, they're here and they still need these resources as well. And what I would also say is that these folks may need more of the Habitat for Humanity resources or folks who are doing different kind of permaculture building. And what we've been able to do on different Native American reservations is have a permaculture folks come in and teach a class and a house gets built out of an alternative appropriate material, whether it be straw bale, earth bags, whatever. But it's kind of like getting more creative to say, okay, this is how much money they have. Now, how much is it going to take to rebuild? What resources do we have that are mainly people resources to fill that gap?
One other thing about engaging those marginalized communities that I've learned, I lived in Kings Beach at Lake Tahoe for a long time, and that's sort of where my volunteerism really started. And this was not a disaster situation, but we had a high concentration of Latino immigrants and some high concerns of people being undocumented. So there's a lot of fear, and there's a lot of fear for people getting involved in that community. And what we realized was we would do these events, for example, such as this, and we thought we were being inclusive and we put the flyers up in Spanish, but there was still a divide of people not feeling welcome. And what a small resource center did was they started doing events that really only invited that marginalized community to, and in a way to show that they were respected and sort of focusing on their needs. And it would be, Mexican music, Latino food, all Spanish speaking, rather than the English-Spanish translation, which made people, it engaged them into the community more. So as much as we want in the long run to see that this Laotian or your Latino community get involved and come here and we all sit next to each other and our neighbors, that cultural divide exists. So sometimes setting up events specifically geared to them and maybe not as, hey, it's the whole giant community, can engage those people in more in this short term to gain their trust and maybe get them engaged in the longer term, bigger community process as well.
Yeah, that's a great question. You have a further comment, or? Okay, here. I'll give you the microphone, that way it'll be on the video. So.
I am Otilia Rubio. I wanted to share some of my experience now that you say about insurance. Okay, our insurance, we're insured through Nationwide, and they respond to us like maybe the second day or third day, but it went like really fast, in context, we were like in a rush, and this and that, and then I said, well, I needed more time to go through all my items. And then they say to me, well, you know what, you just insure for this much money. And then I thought, well, but I have more stuff this worth more than they say, no, you only need to reach this certain amount of money and that's it. Okay, so with respect that, we kind of, we say, well, if that's what it is what it is. We believe, okay, we're insured for that much money, that's it. But then, when people come, people that we don't even know, like the Green Spa, they come to us and they start talking about, oh, you know what? They always say that, insurance, they work for their own benefits. They're not your agents. They work for themselves. And that's when we kind of get like really confused, and then we're thinking, really? So these people, they're here like a kind of, I'm sorry to say this, like screw-ups after that we went through this And then they think, they say to us, oh, you know what, we help you to recover more money. And then I say, well, the insurance, they tell me there's some money like in the side, like in the bucket, that's what they tell us. And I asked one of them, okay, I want specific to know how much money exactly do I have. And I tell him, and you write it down for me. And they say, oh, no, we cannot do that. And I say, oh, okay, and I thought, okay, their business, And then the adjusters, the public adjusters, they come on the other hand and then they promise, oh, you know what, we can help you to recover all the money. But these people, they're charging 30%. And then to me, I think, well, this is not fair, like out of my money, they're making money, like, to me, it's like they're not doing that much, like nothing really. And okay, so we reject the offer with the public adjusters, the green spot, because we feel like, my son and I, we feel like we didn't feel comfortable at all. But now, and then we kind of get a break, because, oh, okay, yes, I'm going to deal with my insurance and that's it. And then we have now a local man here, his name is Pete Romero, maybe he's somewhere in here. And he works for a nonprofit organization and also he has his business, he's an adjuster too. And again, this man, he's talking to us. He say, oh no, there's money in there. We're going to recover. We're going to help you to recover this money. But to me, it's like it's a total confusion. Like I don't know if he really trusts these people or not. And he's here. This man supposed to educate us, to give a free. He's giving it a free. Jobs and all that. But at the same time, we would like to hear from somebody else, like it's not like somebody that can really know about that policy, those coverages.
Right. What I would suggest, and when we finish, because I think we're going to wrap up here in a minute, I can also chat with you in the lobby a little bit offline, but I don't know all the policy rules in California, so I can just give you some general advice. But for you and for everybody else that is hearing this, and will take this back to your friends and your neighbors, you were very wise to reject that first offer. They do, historically, insurance companies do try to make you an offer in the very beginning quickly when you're confused and you take this money and then you go like, oh wait, that's not enough money. That's what you saw. Then the adjusters come in and they charge 30% to try to get you the money that you actually deserve, which really, right, it makes you very distrustful. I very much understand. So the few things that you said, if there is a nonprofit organization in the area that's doing that kind of work, that's a better place to start. There are usually a lot of legal advocacy groups in your community or in your county that might be able to help. Look into those. Go to that long-term recovery. Go to whichever community centers offering case management. Those are the ways to really, get the good answers from people. The other suggestions that I would make is if you start really having trouble with people, call whatever it is in California. In New Jersey, we call it DOBI. It's the Department of Banking and Insurance. It's the state group that, certifies the insurance companies. If you have a problem, you open a case with them and you go, hey, I don't like how they're treating me. I think they're doing me wrong. The state investigates them. In these kinds of situations, you need to do that stuff. I'm not overly litigious, but that is, unfortunately, that's the process that we live in with that. Call the insurance department in the state. That is going to be, again, like I was saying before, that's going to be part of the process. It's going to be paperwork. But look to make sure you're getting the best out of your insurance policy. Some of the other ways that you can do that for yourself is anywhere that you have photos of your home online, friends, family members, compile those. Compile what it looked like before the event. Before it burned, what did the house look like? What did you have inside of your house? What did you actually lose? As Andy said, the township seems to have done a great job with getting through and getting the debris cleaned up and some of those opportunities, which is fantastic just mentally. It's also fantastic because it's going to save you a little bit of money of actually having to have that demolition work and some of those things done. Go to your township. They effectively condemned your home. They took it down. You need to get paperwork from your building department that says my home was dangerous and it had to be taken down and it was a complete loss that helps you with your insurance company. So that's part of some of the steps, is making sure, or reminding that your township and your building department that they need to start generating that letter to all of your community members that says, this is what happened on this date, there was a storm. Our building code and health and safety code X, Y, and Z state that the houses needed to be demolished, and it's been done. And your house was a loss. So again, that's where some of this upstream, downstream stuff comes from. We have these discussions, we inform our building departments, then they come back and help us. So like I said, if you'd like, I can even give you a list of some questions up in the lobby, and maybe I'll write them down so Andy can put them on the website later. The kindness I want to remind you about also is you get frustrated, you get tired, but your building department and all your community members are going to be overwhelmed because of what they just lost, and they're dealing with a situation they've probably never dealt with before. So, you know, the people that are in your community departments are also trying to figure out what the heck's going on, and I'm sure they end up grappling with some of the same issues. You forget, I'm sure you don't forget, but we as a whole forget. The library burned down, part of the school burned, and your township administrators are now having some of the same arguments with insurance companies and other people that you are. So if you can go in with some of that kindness and ask good questions, everyone starts going, oh, wow, we're all having the same problem, and the information will come out in a more positive way to the whole group as well. So I hope that helps answer some of your questions.
Well, thank you very much. That was really great. Great question, and it's very impactful. I think a lot of times in some of this stuff, it does kind of come down to you doing your own homework and your own resources, and these issues are very complicated. We have a system where private companies are insuring your home, and they have a financial interest against paying you. So that's just unfortunately part of the basic economics of this. You're doing exactly the right thing. You're asking questions. You're taking everything with a grain of salt and doing your own research. And I think that's a fantastic thing. Unfortunately, I think we're a little bit out of time. So again, let's have a round of applause for our panel, and much appreciated.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks.